Why I miss filler episodes in anime and cartoons. There was a time when people dreaded hearing the words, "This week's episode is filler." It meant the story wasn't moving forward. No new villain, no dramatic revelation, no massive fight. Just characters existing. Today, however, I think we've swung too far in the opposite direction. Some of my favorite modern animated series have almost no filler whatsoever, and while I absolutely love them, I can't help but wish they slowed down every once in a while. Not because they're poorly paced, or because I want meaningless episodes, but because I miss spending time with the characters. One of my favorite shows in recent memory is The Amazing Digital Circus. Every episode is creative, visually stunning, and somehow manages to push both the mystery and the emotional arcs forward. There isn't really any wasted time. Each episode feels important, and yet, every time one ends, I find myself wanting another episode. Not because of the cliffhanger, but because I simply want to spend more time with everyone. I want to see Pomni and Ragatha have an ordinary conversation. I want to watch Jax annoy everyone over absolutely nothing. I want to know what happens during the days where the cast isn't trapped inside another existential nightmare. The show gives us exactly what we need. I just wish it gave us a little more than that. Not plot, but life. Oddly enough, I feel exactly the same way about Cowboy Bebop. Now, some people might immediately disagree. Bebop is basically all filler. I don't really think that's true. Most episodes may not advance the overarching story of Spike and Vicious, but nearly every one of them develops the crew, expands the universe, or explores one of the show's central themes. They're standalone and episodic, but they aren't empty, and that's exactly why people still remember them. Episodes like Mushroom Samba, Toys in the Attic, or Bohemian Rhapsody don't exist to delay the ending. They exist because they let us simply live alongside these characters for another 20 minutes. We learn how Jet spends his downtime, we see Faye making terrible decisions, and Ed gets to be, well, Ed. The world feels inhabited because we're allowed to experience it outside of life or death situations. When the emotional episodes finally arrive, they hit so much harder because we've already learned what normal looks like. I think that's what many modern shows are missing. They're obsessed with momentum. Every episode has to reveal something, escalate something, answer one mystery while introducing another. Streaming services have fundamentally changed how stories are written. Instead of 26 episode seasons, where characters naturally breathe between major events, we now get 8 episodes that feel like an 8-hour movie. It's efficient and it's tightly written, but sometimes efficiency comes at the cost of intimacy. If every episode is the biggest episode yet, none of them get the chance to simply exist. And that's where I think people misunderstand what filler actually is. Filler isn't just an episode where nothing important happens. The best filler episodes actually do something incredibly valuable. They deepen relationships, they establish routines, and they make worlds feel lived in. They let characters be funny, awkward, bored, and happy. Characters don't become memorable solely because they save the world. They become memorable because we understand who they are when they aren't trying to save it. Of course, there is a balance. Not all filler is good, and I don't think every series needs more of it. Take One Piece, for example. I love One Piece, but I also think the anime spends far too much time switching scenes or inserting extra material just to avoid catching up with the manga. That's filler at its worst. It isn't expanding the world because the creators had something meaningful to say. It's buying time. Ironically, one of my favorite aspects of Netflix's live-action One Piece was that it trimmed a lot of that excess away. It cut characters, it condensed arcs, and it streamlined events. Normally, I'd be arguing against cutting material. Stuff like One Piece, which cuts the fat down all the way to the bone, ultimately diminishes the very work itself. But in this case, I think it actually improved the pacing while preserving what mattered most. Because the issue wasn't that the story took its time, it was that it often wasn't using that time effectively. Good filler adds value, and bad filler delays value. I think about shows like Avatar: The Last Airbender a lot whenever this topic comes up. Episodes like the tales of Ba Sing Se don't radically change the plot. You could remove them and still understand the ending, but emotionally, the series would be dramatically weaker. Those quieter stories give every character space to breathe. They remind us that these aren't just heroes marching from one objective to another. They're children, they're friends, and they're people trying to laugh despite living through a war. Without those moments, the calm before the storm, the dramatic ones wouldn't carry nearly the same weight. There's an idea in architecture called negative space. Sometimes what isn't built is just as important as what is. I think storytelling works the same way. The quiet moments give shape to the loud ones. the ordinary days make the extraordinary ones feel extraordinary. If characters never get to relax, the audience never gets to fall in love with them beyond what they accomplish. When I finish an episode of The Amazing Digital Circus, I don't just want answers about the simulation. I want to know what game Gangle likes playing, what Pomni does when she can't sleep, and whether Ragatha has any stories from before everyone else in the main cast arrived. Not because those details are necessary, but because they make the characters feel real. When I watch Cowboy Bebop, I don't remember every bounty. I remember the moments the Bebop crew shared meals, argued over money, complained about food, and sat silently while the universe drifted past. Those moments weren't interruptions. They were the story. Maybe that's why I miss filler episodes. Not because I want stories to be longer, but because I want worlds to feel larger. I want characters to exist beyond the moments where they're needed by the plot. I want stories that trust me to enjoy spending time with the characters, even when nothing world-changing is happening. Sometimes the episodes that move the story forward aren't the ones that stay with us the longest. Sometimes it's the episodes where everyone just hangs out.